and wrote down who signed up. I think everybody except, I think we got almost everybody, 2 people still haven't chosen a paper. Those of you who chose more than one paper, can you narrow it down to one and take your, so just go back up and just choose the one and raise your name. Oh, and who else? Okay, so, and I assume everybody else is happy with their papers? Okay, or can you live with their papers? Okay. Good. Okay, so I have to say, when it comes to paper grading, I am the queen of procrastination. I was going to start grading papers last night. I didn't. We played a game. We played a game on the Kindle last night, so. And I did laundry, so sorry. A lot of things get done when there's papers to grade, you know? So, but tonight I am starting right after class. So, okay, so I wanted to go through the 2 pathways today, the extrinsic and the intrinsic, and you probably aren't going to exactly see the boundary between extrinsic and intrinsic because they're sort of all, the 2 pathways do collide, and oftentimes cells are doing both pathways. So we're going to assume that our cell has, it's huge. This is a full page, and actually when I get done with this page today, I'm happy to quit. I think then we can start our Thanksgiving break. I know, except probably a lot of you have more stuff to do. Anybody in immunology? Who's in immunology? Okay, good. Because you might help me out about the cytotoxic T cells. So we're going to assume, well, we'll start over here. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to describe all of the required contacts between a cytotoxic T cell and an abnormal cell that the cytotoxic T cell targets. I'm just going to want to think about the apoptotic contacts. Okay, so this is a cytotoxic T cell. It's expressing a protein called CD94L, or the Fas ligand. Okay, it's membrane bound. And the abnormal cell will have a receptor for that ligand. Unless there's some cancer cells that actually turn off this gene. Okay, and this receptor is Fas, or is it CD95 and I'm saying CD94? I think it's CD95. Does that sound familiar? Okay, and then CD95. Okay, there are other contacts because the cytotoxic T cell just doesn't randomly land on a cell. There are also receptors on the cytotoxic T cell that bind to specific unique features of the cell that's going to kill. So there's a recognition interaction that is not really part of this story. And you guys have heard about, did you guys talk about porphyrin and gramzyme B? Have you talked about cytotoxic, talked about a cytotoxic T function? Okay, I'll try to remember to mention that. Okay. Okay, so once inside the cell, or when the receptor, the Fas ligand, or the Fas receptor has made contact with a ligand, it kind kind of like receptor tyrosine kinases, accumulates a mass of proteins. Okay? I made one kind of look like a chair, and this is called FAD, for fast activated death domain. Okay? And this is, and you're going to see a similar pattern. Like the cell is, sometimes I think it's not that clever. It keeps doing the same thing over and over again. Okay, but the FAD also has a binding site, okay, to recruit a couple other proteins. So FAD doesn't have any enzymatic activity. It's just a protein that's a docking site for a couple of caspases. And that reminds me, we should have started out talking a little bit about caspases, but that's okay. Okay, so this would be procaspase 8. So this big giant complex forms, and by pulling procaspase 8s close enough together, they can auto-cleave or auto-transcleave each other. So they can activate each other through cleavage. Transition here. Auto-cleavage. Okay? All right, so I want to take a little sidetrack and talk about caspases and the different kinds of caspases. So some caspases, like procaspase 8, and I forgot my math, see, I can't remember if the activator caspase is correct. These are regulatory caspases. Okay, they have, in addition to the caspase domain, they have a regulatory domain. Okay, and there are actually two kinds of domains that you can have in a regulatory or an activator caspase. One is a card domain, and one's a dead domain. Okay, and procaspase 8 has two actually card domains. Okay, these are not the caspases that are going to execute apoptosis. Okay, they're just the regulators. Their job is to activate the effector caspases. Okay, which don't have any regulatory domains. They don't have a card domain, they don't have a dead domain, all they are is the procaspase. So effector caspases, those are the ones that are going to really do the work of apoptosis, cut the key proteins to execute apoptosis. Okay, so the effector caspases in the cell, the most common ones are 3, 6, and 7. So caspase 3, caspase 6, and caspase 7 are the effector caspases. And it's really caspase 8's job to activate the effector caspases. So its job is not to carry out apoptosis, but to activate the caspases that do carry out apoptosis. So that's the other thing we've certainly found about the cell, is that it is certainly redundant in what it does. Okay, so once once caspase 8 has been activated, then it can activate the effector caspases. 3 or 6 or 7 are cut by caspase 8 into the functional caspase. And the cell can go on to commit apoptosis. Okay, or apoptosis. Did I ever tell, I don't know if I tell a story in Bio 111 about how come I call it apoptosis and Dr. Doling calls it apoptosis? I told that story? Okay. Just,
Yeah, I haven't heard it.
you haven't heard it?
I haven't heard it.
Okay. Well, have you guys watched Dinosaur Train? You probably don't. You don't have little kids around the house.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I kind of like Dinosaur Train. Dinosaur. But, how many people, you don't say pterodactyl. You never say pterodactyl. What do you say? Pterodactyl. Okay, so apoptosis, when it first hit the scientific community, and everybody was talking about apoptosis because it was a brand new way, discovery of how cells die. Every single time you saw the word apoptosis, behind it, or right after it, was the phonetic spelling of apoptosis, because it was a new word. And this, this is from the Greek word, like ptosis, but you never say ptosis, you say tosis. So those of us who grew up through that discovery of apoptosis and saw the phonetic spelling over and over and over again learned how to say apoptosis. Well, that phonetic spelling gradually disappeared from the literature. So when younger people, like Dr. Doling, came across the word apoptosis, they pronounce it phonetically, apoptosis. So the younger community just gradually learned to say apoptosis rather than apoptosis. Okay, ignoring the fact that this is a Greek word. But that's what, and right now, actually both pronunciations are acceptable. Which bothers me. No. It doesn't bother me. So I say apoptosis because I saw 1,000 times the phonetic pronunciation of apoptosis. And probably Dr. Dolan has never seen the phonetic spelling or the pronunciation guide afterwards. So both are acceptable. Neither one of us are wrong, although we both like to claim the other is wrong, but neither of us is wrong. But this is the extrinsic pathway, okay? The trigger to activate the caspases came from an external signal. In this case, the cytotoxic T cell, through its Fas ligand, contacted a Fas receptor or death receptor, and the cell commits apoptosis. Okay, but usually this kind of a pathway activates an internal or the intrinsic pathway. Okay, so I wanted to do that. So you got that? I don't know if you want to make a line around it or a circle around this. Okay, but now we're going to go into the intrinsic pathway. And we're going to have our cells sort of okay, so this is now our, everything on this side is inside the cell. So caspase 8 not only activates the effector caspases, it can also activate, by cleavage, the BH3 only protein BID. Okay, so the cut version of BID is TBID, T for truncated. And it does actually a couple of different things, as we saw at the end of yesterday. Okay, it can, this is gonna be the mitochondria. I don't know if I need a big amount. Oh, need more space. Okay, here's the mitochondria. TBID will bind to BAX okay, who currently may be in the cytoplasm with its transmembrane domain tucked in a little bit, so you can make it, I would tuck it in just a little bit. But this is a protected BAX. BAX can be in the cytoplasm, incapable of executing apoptosis or creating a pore. But when BID binds to BAX, that will translocate BAX I've never drawn mitochondrial membranes. Okay. It will transfer the BAX to the mitochondrial membrane. So that's how TBID can be an activator castrate. And you know that TBID can also bind to BCL2, all of those proteins. Okay, and inactivate the BCL2 protein, okay? So TBID has that dual function of inactivating the anti-apoptotic BCL proteins. Something else I forgot to tell you, but I'll do one more piece of information at the end of the pathway. Okay, but it also activates BAX by getting BAX into the membrane. So let's assume then that a membrane forms. Okay, got that? And what's going to come out? Cytochrome C. Okay, I'm going to have to erase my, I'm going to need some space. Here, do this. Okay. So cytochrome C comes line up, and I make cytochrome C red because it in fact is red. It has a iron, a porphyrin ring attached to some iron. Okay, so cytochrome C is going to have to bind to a protein. It's not going to, it doesn't have much pro-apoptotic activity all by itself. And the protein that it binds to is called ACAP. Okay, And APAF doesn't have much, and it doesn't have any enzymatic activity at all. But you get a bunch of APAFs and cytochrome Cs together. Okay. As a matter of fact, we'll put cytochrome C here, bound to APAF. Okay, now I just drew 2 APAFs and 2 cytochrome Cs, but the reality is, imagine just a whole complex. So if you look on Google, do a Google search for APAF and cytochrome C, and you see this circular ring of gobs of APAFs and cytochrome Cs. So I drew it extremely simple, but in reality, there are multiple APAFs and multiple cytochrome Cs in a great big giant circular complex, as most people draw. Okay? But the job of this, so you'll notice another pattern, but this becomes a binding site for procaspase 9. Okay? Procaspase 9. So procaspase 9 is, as you could tell, it's a regulated or an activator caspase because it has an additional domain, and this one happens to be a dead domain. Okay? And it's APAF's job to pull 2 procaspase 9s together so that they can autocleave. Okay? So APAF has about the same job as FAS. Okay? So we get activate procaspase 8. Or sorry, procaspase 9. Okay? And caspase 9s do exactly the same thing as caspase 8. They activate the effector caspases. Okay? Now I'll wait for a minute and we'll summarize what all went on. So if a person wanted to know, well, here you discovered that some cells that he or she were working with were committing apoptosis. One of the questions is, was the signal to commit apoptosis an extrinsic signal or an intrinsic signal? Okay? So one of the main experiments that person would do is look for the activation of caspase 8. If caspase 8 is activated, what kind of a signal triggered apoptosis? The extrinsic, right? So the extrinsic signal. If caspase 9 was the only activator caspase activated, we would know it was an internal signal. Okay? So in both cases, caspase 3, 6, and 9 is going to be activated. The only difference is an extrinsic signal would activate caspase 8 to activate the effector caspases, and an intrinsic signal would activate procaspase 9 to activate the effector caspases. Okay? In an intrinsic pathway, BID and BIM work exactly the same way. So you could do the same story by relabeling. BIM does not have to be truncated by the procaspase 8. It's fine, it's functional as is, but BIM does exactly the same job as BIM.
And BIM's activated by,
It doesn't have to be activated.
so what pathway is BIM?
BIM would be in the intrinsic pathway. Okay, BIM is intrinsic.
So it's backs in the intrinsic at all?
Oh, it's definitely, so the extrinsic pathway does not involve the mitochondria at all. If you just activate the extrinsic pathway, it would be called extrinsic, but it's also mitochondrial independent, because caspase 8 activated the effector caspases. But the intrinsic pathway, notice that in order to activate procaspase 9, you had to involve the mitochondria. So that's sometimes also an assay. Did the mitochondria get involved in this? Do we see the release of cytochrome C? Can we find it in the cytoplasm, or is it stuck in the mitochondria? And I've seen a few assays that looked at the location of cytochrome C. Okay, so before I forget, it's on my notes. Tell me about those, what do you know about Gramzyme B? Do you remember any talking about it?
Just that it's perforin first.
Yeah.
And then the end, and then it just acts as.
Does the perforin, does it make a cytoplasmic bridge between the cytotoxic T cell and the abnormal cell? Or is it?
You can just like poke little holes.
Yeah. Okay, let's pretend we poke holes. Okay, with perforin?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna line the hole. I don't know how perforin works. Okay, but cytotoxic T cells make a protein perforin. And the job of perforin is like what Matt says, to poke holes in the membrane of the abnormal cell that needs to be done in. And that, I'm going to come back after we talk about this and think about what are abnormal cells. What kind of cells would be killed this way? Okay? And this becomes a pathway for the influx of Gramzyme B. Which is a protease. It's a whole lot like caspases. Okay, and Gramzyme B does a couple of things. One of the things that it can do is this reaction. It can activate BAD. Okay, so we'll say it can convert BID into T. Okay? So if the Fas ligand, Fas connection didn't do the job, Gramzyme B can certainly do the job. And that would certainly involve the intrinsic pathway then. Okay? The other thing it can do is activate effector caspases. Okay, so if you didn't get a good enough contact between Fas ligand and the Fas receptor, you got another way of committing apoptosis that doesn't really involve the Fas activated death domain in this particular compound. And I don't know if Gramzyme B is transferred at every single contact between a cytotoxic T cell and an abnormal cell, or if it just happens some of the time. Okay, but what would be an abnormal cell? But first, an abnormal cell has to display some sort of cell surface identifier, like, oh, something's wrong here. But what kind of things would fall under the category of abnormal cell?
Viral infected cell.
Yeah, virus-infected cell. One way to get rid of a virus infection, that'll just kill the cell. So the cell would display some sort of viral protein component on the cell's surface. What else? This could be a parasitic cell, right? Maybe another, it's not a virus-infected cell, it could be a parasite. Transplant tissue, so transplanted cells. And it would be nice if we could put cancer cells, but a lot of times cancer cells just hide or evade immune recognition. And I'm going to make sure that I mention melanoma. Okay. So this is cytotoxic T cells actually don't target anything that looks abnormal. They can only target one kind of abnormal cell, and it's the particular kind of abnormal cell they recognize based on the, what do you call it, the immunoglobulin that they express on their cell surface?
MHC?
Huh? MHC?
Yeah, wait.
Well, that's
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the contacts. That's one of the contacts, MHC. But then there has to be a contact with the protein fragment that's mounted on the MHC. And I can't remember that contact. Let's see, a couple other things that I'm not even done with this picture yet. We got a couple other things. Okay. So, getting to biochem lab, but there's a group of proteins that can inactivate caspases. So I'm going to put a great big thing right there. And these proteins are called IAPs, okay, for inhibitor of apoptotic proteins. Inhibitor of apoptotic proteins. And probably the one protein that the cell uses more, almost all cells use more than any other cell, is XIAP. Okay? We're going to discover that XIAP is a substrate for AKT, so we're going to cover that later. Okay? So these inhibitor proteins are ubiquitin ligases. And they target the caspases. They can also target ipene caspase 9 also. Not just the effector caspases, they can also target the activator caspases. Okay? They are, they are a target cell of a bunch of different things that will block apoptosis. You notice that NF-kappa B, the protein we're kind of looking at in biochem lab, can block apoptosis. And one of the ways it blocks